Juan, can you, is there a flag there that you can show or not? We don't have a flag at all? Nope. Okay.
We can still do it.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started, everybody. Welcome. We started with item number 3, general matters. And this is our public portion of our meeting this evening. So welcome, everybody. And first of all, we'll have our flag salute. That's item 3.01, our flag salute. And I think I'm kind of losing track of who leads the flag salutes. Let me have Carrie, can you lead us in the flag salute, please? Is Carrie back with us?
Yeah.
I'm right here.
Carrie,
Okay.
oh, yeah. Carrie, can you listen to the flag salute? Thank you. I
Sure.
appreciate
Will
that.
everyone stand? Okay. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag. Is everyone ready? Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Carrie, for that. Appreciate it very much. Okay, at this time, let's go on to item 3.02 to approve, disapprove order of the agenda. If none, let's go on to item 3.03 to approve, disapprove order of the agenda. If none, then we'll go on to item 3.04, report of action taken in closed session. So we'll have our superintendent report out the items in closed session. Superintendent?
Yes, the board unanimously approved the closed session minutes of June 23rd, 2020. The board also unanimously approved the closed session minutes of the special board meeting of July 15, 2020. The board also unanimously approved the settlement of OAH case number 202-0011062. There are no other actions to report.
Thank you, Superintendent. And before we go any further, let me just say that Board Member Tan Tran did call this afternoon to let us know that he is ill. He not feeling well today, so he's absent. So we're down to 4 board members tonight since Tan is ill. Okay, let's go on to item number 4. Number 4 deals with oral communications. The members of the public can address the board on any issue within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board or agenda items. Members of the public may also address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with board bylaws 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. No action can be taken on any agenda item at this time. Questions may be referred to the administration or put on a future agenda. So with that, we go on to item 4.01, which deals with oral communications. And Superintendent, do we have anybody out there that wants to address us at this time?
Not on a, we have speakers that want to address 501, which is the school reopening distance learning presentation we have. Okay.
So let's go on to item 5, dealing with information, discussion, and or action items. And we go to 5.01, which is the 2020-21 report to the board on school opening plan distance learning. Superintendent, did you want them to go ahead and give their remarks at this time before we begin you begin your report?
It's totally up to you, Board President, if you want that or if you want to wait until the presentation.
Why don't we go ahead and let them speak first, and then how many do we have individuals?
We have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 speakers, but I only see 3 that have are
checked in
here to do so.
Okay, let's go ahead and hear from those 3 at this time.
All right. Allie, Victorine.
Hi, Ali.
Did you unmute her? You can see her. There she is. Can you hear us, Ellie?
Hello there, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Thank you.
Hi, Ellie.
Hi, George. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to come here to express some gratitude. Mr. Cruz and members of the school board, my name is Allie Victorine, and I teach 6th grade at Windmill Springs. And I have been involved with Franklin-McKinley as a parent, an instructional aide, a teacher, and of course, a proud union member of FMEA for a combination of 35 years. 2 years ago, I took on the role as chief negotiator for the Franklin-McKinley Educators Association. This summer, we were all thrown into an unusual and whole new world of creating a memo of understanding for distance learning. My team, we started with a blank slate, and my team of Scott Shumlinson, our FMEA president, Veronica Andrade, our special ed representative, Imelda Murillo, and myself as classroom teachers, worked many long hours, along with an administrative team that was truly collaborative and wonderful to work with. We often were working until 7 in the evening, doing our best to craft an MOU that serves the needs of our students and families, while still protecting the rights and, dare I say, sanity of our teachers and unit members, our teachers and special ed service providers who want nothing more to be in the classroom with our kids. The experience of working with such thoughtful, strong, caring administrative team has been supremely rewarding despite the long hours. We had good conversations based on thoughtful questions and concerns. Throughout the process, it became supremely evident to our team that our leaders in FMSD have the strongest interests of our community, students, families, and employees at heart. So I want to thank and appreciate Dr. Norma Martinez-Palmer, Annette Gratzky, Principal Magdalena Carrasca, Jason Van, I appreciate, along with all the other support we received from maintenance, Gabriel Tamurano and Vanessa Burbach, and from Dr. Miriam Galvaran, who answered our questions for the special ed department. Their dedication to our district is just so wonderful and so evident. In an effort to be as transparent, open, and informative to our members, we will be bringing the MOU to our members in an open forum this Thursday. And we are sure that we will be formalizing the agreement soon after. Once again, thank you for the collaborative process. Our entire team looks forward to our next negotiations, knowing that on the other side of the table, we have such thoughtful leaders. A team that truly has their hearts committed to our community. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Very much appreciate your remarks.
Up next, we have Dewey Nguyen. Dewey, can you hear us?
Is she possibly muted?
No, they're unmuted.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear us?
She may not be at her computer. She may be online, but not there.
We'll go to the next one then. We'll go to Scott Shumlinson.
Good evening, trustees.
Hi, Scott.
This is, hopefully you can hear me. Sounds like you can.
Yes.
I'm going to state the obvious and say this is going to be a challenging year.
Okay.
I want to speak specifically to the distance learning plan that is before you tonight. It was put together using a collaborative process with many, many hours of thoughtful discussion. But it is a confusing plan. For it to work, principals are going to need to be very well versed, and they're going to have to support teachers and other staff members in implementing this plan. It's not exactly user-friendly, quick read-through. This is a sea change in how we educate our students in this district. And of course, districts around the country are going through a similar transition to distance learning. But I really want to make sure that all the that we scaffold this process to make sure that the ultimate end product is something that really works. There's also two other factors that will be needed for the success of this plan. First of all, flexibility. This plan will not work equally well for all schools and all teachers. It's a template. There's going to need to be adjustments made to meet the needs of our students and to work well for our teachers. So we'll know a lot more when this Monday comes around and the rubber meets the road. But I do hope that sites can be adaptive as they make this plan work for their specific needs. Lastly, for this plan to work, we need students to have a functional device. I've heard from a lot of teachers out there speaking of a great lack of devices. I know the district is still doing a needs assessment and distributing devices to fill those needs. And I can only hope that we do have enough devices to launch this distance learning plan successfully. Thank you, and fingers are crossed for this plan to work.
Thank you, Scott. All of our fingers are crossed over here too. Thank you.
Okay, let's try one more time with Dewey Nguyen. If not, we'll go on to the presentation.
One, let's go forward with the presentation and then come back and see if she's back at that time. At that time, where the individual is back.
Okay. I'm going to. Presentation. Let me put up the presentation. So thank you. Tonight, we're going to present to you the district's distance learning plan. I will be presenting some of the slides. Dr. Martinez-Palmer will present some of the slides, and Jason will present some of the slides. So I just want to go ahead and first start with just acknowledgements. As you've heard from some of our speakers earlier, there's been a tremendous amount of work done this summer. This has not been a typical summer. And, you know, both are through negotiations of MOUs and just the significant planning that has had to go into developing a reopening plan, both in a hybrid model that we had presented before, and now the distance learning model that committees and subcommittees have been working to really have us be as ready as we can be and ready to move in any direction, really, because we don't know what's in front of us, as we've seen throughout these few months, that as we think we have it and we planned, things change. And so we're going to have to be ready to pivot at any point for that. and be flexible. As I said this morning, I think that that's one of the biggest words that, we can use right now, flexibility and patience, because this is all new to us. And we need to make sure that we are patient and flexible as we move forward. And so you can see here the number of people, and you can even see some people that are in multiple committees. They put in a lot of time to make sure that we're ready for our students for the 17th. So I will go to the next slide. There we go. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Martinez-Palmer.
So our journey in planning for the reopening of school began in mid-June with some preliminary meetings and planning for how we were going to approach the work. So we didn't just dive into talking about what we're going to do. We actually talked about what we needed to be thinking about as we move forward. And so we started our conversations by reading the resolution. And I kept reminding the reopening advisory work group that we needed to get on the balcony. And what that meant is we needed to not get into the weeds right away. We needed to really be thinking about the district as a whole. Who were our students? What were our parents saying to us? How we were going to support teachers? We really wanted to this process to be collaborative and inclusive. And I believe, and I have to thank Allie for her comments. I was very touched by that because it really truly was a collaborative effort. So the conversation always started with equity, and here's just a few quotes from some of the members of the Reopening Advisory Committee as they reflected and thought about what this meant for them and what it meant for us as a team. Next slide, please. So I've already shared this information, but these are some, we wanted to make sure that we were data driven. And so the data that we had was what were parents saying to us, what did we see in our surveys. And so we wanted to make sure that we remembered that one of the concerns that parents had was that they wanted their students to be interacting with their teachers. We found that last spring in our crisis distance learning stage that we learned that students were more engaged when there was video conferencing. We learned that parents needed support and that we needed to support our teachers. Next slide, please. We had a town hall meeting at the end of July once the board approved distance learning, and we presented what distance learning meant. What was it going to, what questions did people have? And so these were some of the some of the most common concerns or needs expressed. Many parents just wanted to know what was the schedule because they wanted to plan accordingly for their own childcare. And then there were some parents that talked about not having childcare. So we took those concerns to heart. Some were concerned about only having 4 hours of instructional time. We kept reminding them that this was a decision that was made in the legislature. They were also concerned about making sure that teachers were going to be providing instruction to them online, and many questions about devices, when to pick them up, what to do about internet, what is a hotspot. So we answered many questions in the 3 town hall meetings that we had on those 2 days. This is just a definition of what distance learning is, and I'm sure you have seen it, as this is what is in SB 98, AB 77 given to us, so that there was a common understanding across the state about what distance learning, how it's defined. And then for us, it's what is the implication of implementing this approach to teaching and learning. These are 2 words that are often being used these days. Types of learning and teaching as it relates to distance learning: asynchronous and synchronous. So asynchronous here you see is students working independently on their own, working on standards aligned assignments. They can be looking at a video that they can be watching a video that maybe has been pre-recorded by the teacher, or educational videos that are provided on some of the platforms and applications. Versus synchronous, which is live interaction, which is required by the state, where teachers have the opportunity to teach students online where students can actually learn content and socialize with their peers and with their teacher, which is something that was equally important to both teachers and to community members, as we kept hearing over the past few months. This is what we have defined as synchronous instruction for Franklin-McKinley School District. We have defined relationship development, which is one of the domains or one of the areas in the CASEL framework that the district adopted. And so the focus is going to be on developing relationships. We also agreed with FMEA and with many teacher committees that these areas that you see here, math, ELA, ELD, and social emotional learning, would be the areas that would be taught synchronously, and social science and science would be integrated. At the middle schools, there will be opportunities for students to receive synchronous instruction in all of the subject areas, including the electives. The decision was to embed or integrate synchronous instruction throughout the day, depending on student need, grade, and schedule. We also agreed that schedules would be developed grade level alike, so that it can provide consistency to families across a grade level, but also so that teachers can have consistent planning around their content. The framework that was developed with synchronous instruction also allows for teachers to work with small groups of students or teach their whole class. So the synchronous time, for example, could be, if you have a 60-minute synchronous period, you can do 4 groups of 15 minutes each, or you can do 2 groups of 30 minutes each, or you can do a 60-minute lesson with synchronous instruction. So teachers will have the flexibility, depending on what their students need, to organize and schedule a synchronous instruction in that way. And then targeted support is something that is also outlined in the AB 77, SB 98 and mandate. And that is that we must pay attention and we must address the needs of our special populations. This work will be done throughout the day. The asynchronous lessons, the assignments that are given to the students independently, must be aligned to the students' skills, abilities, and needs. And then later on, in about a month, we agreed with FMEA that we would revisit the current synchronous instruction schedule that the framework that we agreed to, and revisit how we might strengthen targeted support after looking at data at the beginning of the year. Next slide. So this is just a summary of what was in AB 98, AB 77, SB 98, AB 77, in terms of how much time would be dedicated to instruction for our students. So when you see this time, for example, 3 hours in kindergarten, that is a combination of asynchronous and synchronous. And so for the instructional framework that we worked on and agreed to, part of that time, those minutes, will be on synchronous, and I'll show you that in a moment. We're still required to teach 180 days this year. So this, I just want to share, this is kind of a high level. We have many schedules, and certainly I am more than happy to share all our different frameworks and schedules with you, but this is a summary. So what you see in that first column, where you see the minimum instructional minutes, that is what is outlined in the state mandate. What you see in the second row, this is what we agreed to with FMEA. So for example, in transitional kinder and kindergarten, teachers would teach for 120 minutes a day synchronously, meaning live interaction. In grades 4 and 6, 7 and 8, you'll see it's up to 150 minutes. So that's the number of minutes that teachers will teach. However, it does not mean that every student will get that number of minutes. For example, in TK Kinder, a student might get 45 minutes of synchronous time daily, or some might get more, up to 125 minutes. English learners will get protected ELD time, and so some of the increase in those minutes is due to the ELD time, or it could be because you're providing targeted support for specific students. So again, as in the example that I provided earlier, if the period is 60 minutes or 45 minutes, Teachers have the flexibility to choose to either work with the whole class or in small groups. The last column there is just showing the remaining time that would be provided to students with asynchronous assignments. These are the platforms. These are the same platforms that we used last year. There was a lot of discussion in our instructional program subcommittee about platforms. One of the concerns parents shared with us is having to learn so many different applications and platforms. These are the two that were again selected for this year. The difference being that we will be purchasing the Seesaw platform so that teachers have access to all of the resources. Seesaw also provides translation in different languages, which is also helpful for parents. And so one of the main reasons for choosing the same two platforms is that teachers were familiar with them. And so with so many things to learn this year and just having to really embrace distance learning in a new way, it was felt that working with something that was familiar would be better for them. For our live interaction requirement, we will be using Zoom district-wide. We have purchased the Education Pro version of Zoom. So teachers will have the opportunity to use breakout rooms, to use the whiteboard, to use all of the different tricks that come with this platform as well. We have developed some video conferencing rules for students, for parents as well, so they understand how their children will be participating in live action and daily live interaction daily. We also are providing our families, which is very different from last spring. We're providing our families with an opt-out form so that if a family or a student will not be participating in the video, then they will opt out. Because we need our students to be engaged with their peers and with their teachers, and because we need them to access learning, we really are encouraging them to participate in the live interaction. But we will honor the request of families who opt not to do that, and perhaps they can participate either by using just the audio, or we can use telephone calls and other means to provide that live interaction.
So participation is going to look very different as we move forward. One of the things that in the past, right, was recorded, attendance was recorded. Basically, the student came into the classroom, the teacher would take attendance, mark them present, and we would get ADA. With the state basically holding us harmless in regards to ADA and funding, and because they're not going to be physically present in the buildings, they want us to make sure that we are addressing participation and engagement, and that it's not good enough for them to just log into Zoom, that there's an expectation that we are going to provide document and be able to provide some re-engagement in terms of participation. So SB 98 requires that the district develop a plan, an attendance plan and re-engagement plan that has to be submitted to the county by the end of September. And so that is currently being developed. And so we are trying to make sure that we're able to capture this information in a way that is easy for teachers to record it, and also for us to run reports so that we can go ahead and do the re-engagement that we're required. And so here is a draft of a sort of tiered levels of re-engagement in which we're trying to identify students early and acting upon it early to eliminate any barriers, find out whether the student is not engaging. Is it a technical issue that we need to resolve in terms of internet connection or anything like that? So these are the tiers that we sort of started to draft in regards to when we would re-engage with them, who would re-engage with them, and then we will work on the documentation as well. The state says that we have to show re-engagement of any student that has missed 60% or more on any given week in regards to their participation either in synchronous or in asynchronous time. So it's not just about the time they miss with the teacher, but also in terms of the work that they may or may not be completing. Teachers will also have to put a time value to the assignments that they are posting for asynchronous, so that it matches we are able to quantify the 4-hour daily instruction. The other, obviously, that we have to make sure that we are in compliance with IDEA in regards to students with IEPs. And we developed distant learning plans in the spring, and the guidance that we've received from the legal has been that those are plans that are in place and valid, unless the students' services and the students' distant learning plan has changed. And therefore, then we will have to meet and have an amendment to that distance learning plan. We will continue to provide all the related services remotely, and then we will continue to have meetings so that we're in compliance with that. The one thing that is on hold is the assessments. We're still getting guidance from CDE and IDEA in regards to when we are able to provide in-person assessments, and then how much of that we can do remotely if possible. Our preschool, we will continue to follow this, their IEPs in regards to the time that they have in their IEP, as our preschools have been running AM, PM, small groups. And so our teachers will be using the Seesaw platform and Zoom and working with families, because obviously there are students that need a lot of assistance. And so they will continue to work with them to provide the services per their IEP.
So we have worked very hard in the last few weeks to make sure that we have the needed curriculum to deliver via distance learning. So I think most of our state adopted curriculum is available in digital form, except for social studies at K-5 and science at K-5. So unfortunately, we haven't gone through the adoption process for those subject areas and those grade levels. They still have access to the textbooks. And so textbooks are being available to the students to pick up. And then the teachers and the students will have access to journeys, collections, math in digital form this year. For our bilingual program at Meadows that we're opening, they are going to be piloting Adelante, which is also available in digital format. The Vietnamese program is working with a consultant, and the teachers and the consultant have created that curricula, which they will be teaching also online. We have made some adjustments to our dual immersion program, but we are going to continue to provide that. Lexia is our district-wide reading intervention, so that will still be available. And so just in summary, we are working hard to identify as many apps and as many websites vetted by our process in our district so that we have some consistency across the district. For assessment, because we will have the need to come back to you in a few weeks with our learning continuity and assessment plan that is due to the state at the end of September. And one of the mandates is really to look at learning loss and what we are doing around learning loss. And so at the end of last year, there was an assessment committee that I was working with to define our assessment plan for the district before COVID-19. So we're going to continue that work and continue with those conversations, because there were some concerns around some of the benchmark assessments that we were using. So this is prime time to actually look at learning loss and to really define our assessment plan for the district. So in the next few weeks, we will be reconvening that committee to look at assessments. But in the meantime, we really want the focus to be on welcoming our students back, getting them reconnected with school, even though school looks differently, Lexia is still available, and so that has a placement test that we will be having students take. Students will be informally assessing and just checking in to see where are the gaps in their grade levels. And so we're going to continue to look at assessments, and this is just a list of some of the assessments that we're going to be looking at, but in no way is it inclusive. We're still looking at other things as well. For our English learners, which is one of the groups that we really need to pay attention to, especially in our district, we made sure that when we developed the instructional framework, that there was a protected ELD period for the students at all the schools. So that will be honored and that will be monitored. We are still required to provide integrated and designated ELD. And so I have made sure that in our professional development for the next 2 days, that is part of the PD for the teachers. We're going to maximize everything that we have in terms of platforms when there is opportunities to provide translation and interpretation. Those two that are being shown there do provide that. Imagine Learning and Rosetta Stone will still be supporting our newcomer students. This year, we're going to continue with Language Line, which was very successful last spring with our distance learning, being able to provide like kind of on the spot interpretation services when teachers and staff needed those services when talking with families. Our district liaisons this year will be trained on the platforms and on kind of the technical side of things so that they can also support families, especially families of English learners. The big push with social emotional learning this year has included a culturally responsive lens. And so we will continue to work on that throughout the year. So we will continue to support our ELs by strengthening our services and our attention to them. I'm hopeful, and I'm being strategic with our new director of curriculum instruction that we really need to make sure that how we are serving our ELs is a little bit more robust than what we've done in the past. This is just a list of the PD that we have lined up for the next 2 days. I have to hand it to teachers. There have been teachers that have been enrolling in their own PD throughout the summer, attending Zoom and Seesaw and all different kinds of virtual learning experiences. But this is a list of what we're offering in the next 2 days, and we will be providing our teachers with opportunities to continue with PD throughout the year, compensating them for their time as needed, and also just making sure that their principals are constantly monitoring and checking to see how instruction is happening during distance learning and finding where we can support our staff.
Okay, this is my slide here on devices and connectivity. Obviously, we need to make sure that our students can access the curriculum that's online through this distance learning model. So we're ensuring that students who don't have a device at home obtain an FMSD device. Once we've covered all of those students, any of those students who have their own devices at home, our long-term goal is to make sure that they have an FMSD device as opposed to using their own device at home, because it allows us to troubleshoot any potential connectivity issues and update any apps more efficiently with our IT team. Next slide. This is just some data on the number of devices that we have either have internally already on our school sites or are on order. I want to say thank you to San Jose, the city of San Jose, as well as the County Office of Education and other partners, because through various grants, we're going to be able to pay for the purchase of Chromebooks and also get some free hotspots that we can issue to staff and students to help the distance learning program be successful. In addition, we're going to also increase our support for parents and for staff members. Not only will the IT team be able to troubleshoot issues, we're also going to be relying on library and media aides and lead tech mentors. These are teachers at the school sites to provide additional support to staff and to students who need help connecting and utilizing the apps that our district offers. Next slide. This is just a small summary of our distribution plan for devices and hotspots to families. I think this here is pretty self-explanatory, but nevertheless, if there are any issues in terms of getting devices to families, our team is ready to provide support as needed to make sure that they have devices so they can connect to our distance learning program. Obviously, safety has been a big factor in terms of making sure distance learning is successful, making sure that the school sites are disinfected regularly so that our teachers can come and utilize their classrooms with limited chances of exposure. Also making sure that all of our classified staff in the front offices are following appropriate safety protocols to make sure that their risk of exposure is limited, as well as making sure that our families are aware of our protocols. So obviously face masks are going to be required for all staff and students. We're going to be continually sending out the message, stay 6 feet apart. Physical distancing is one of the key methods in terms of reducing your exposure to COVID-19. Hand sanitizer has been distributed to all the sites. So that is available for individuals who need that. We have also installed plexiglass barriers at all of our front office sites to make sure that we provide a way of protecting staff members from community members that are coming in to speak with them, and making sure that everyone in the front offices are safe. We're also going to put in place an online platform for daily screening through Company Nurse. This is a great online platform for our staff to sign into before they come into the office to make sure that they've done their own self-screening in terms of temperature, looking for any type of symptoms that relate to COVID-19, and then they can report also the areas that they're going to be utilizing during the day. So if they're going to be in classroom B7, we know that they're in that classroom, and we can align our custodial disinfecting procedures to work on those rooms that have been utilized during the day instead of doing the whole entire site, excuse me. Next slide. Here's additional safety protocols. Obviously, you want to make sure that if face masks or face shields or thermometers or hand sanitizer need to be replenished, that's going to be part of our plan. So we've allocated enough for the first 60 days of the school year, and we'll replenish those as the year progresses. We're also upgrading our HVAC filters in our school sites. We're looking at the MERV 8 and MERV 13 filters that have been known to be better filters to help prevent against the exposure of COVID-19. And obviously, we're putting out signs, flyers, floor markers to help reinforce the safety protocols that we've put in place to keep everyone safe. Next slide. In terms of communication, it's important that we're all aligned in terms of responding to a possible COVID-19 response. So as was indicated earlier, there have been various subcommittees that help put together these protocols, including various teachers, classified staff members, administrative team members. And it's been a very, very great, very, very good process in terms of coming up with protocols that everyone can follow. So obviously, if we are notified of a COVID-19 positive test, as was reported in the public health guidelines, we need to inform Santa Clara County Public Health. We also need to inform staff and community members. We also need to do a contact tracing process to make sure that we notify anyone who's considered a close contact, that's an individual has been close to a COVID-19 positive case for more than 15 minutes and less than 6 feet apart. We also have to close off areas that may have been impacted and do our disinfecting. And then lastly, make sure that individuals who have tested positive and who are close contacts isolate based on the guidance from Santa Clara County Public Health. Next slide.
So one of the populations that we need to outreach specifically have been our McKinley-Ventuna and foster youth. The social workers, this is one of their main tasks as they've returned. They're assigned to each individual school. And so they are reaching out to our foster youth students and making sure to check on them, make sure that they're, if there's any resources or services that they need immediately. and then making sure that they're also connecting them with the devices and the hotspots, and making sure that they're sort of the liaison for that. Our McKinley-Vento students actually have to be recertified every year, and so that's what they're doing now from last year's list. And if there have been no changes in terms of the status, then they requalify them as McKinley-Vento students for the rest of the year. And again, making sure that they're connecting them with resources, and if they don't currently have a device, making sure that they get one as well. So this is just a practice that we had even before COVID-19, that the social workers are connecting with these students, and then also with any other students that were on caseloads that were at high risk, as well as we come back and reconnect with those students. You know, parent engagement is one of the, you know, even before COVID-19, is one of the biggest, you know, things that we can do in terms of, you know, student engagement, student success. And so, but certainly now even more important. And so the committees have actually, the subcommittee that worked on parent engagement included some of our parents. And they, you know, spoke about what are the kinds of things that we should be doing in terms of parent engagement. And one of the things that they said was, look, we need to know at least the basic information about how these platforms work, how do the devices work, because without that, we're lost. We don't know how to support our children. And so we've been collaborating with FMCI, and they have now developed a tiered training that we'll be offering. The first one is going to be in person, because I can't teach a parent how to use the computer if they don't know how to turn it on. And so those will be in person. We will be following all the safety protocols, all those things, so as to mitigate the spread of the virus. But those, we felt that the only way to do that was going to be to do it in person. The second tier is actually, how do you use Seesaw? How do you use Google, Zoom? And so those will be virtually once that we know that they are able to do that, the more technical piece. And so those will be offered to those families. And then the third one, which, as I said, is we also need to know how we can support our children in terms of the environment. And so there's a training in regards to how they can go about creating an environment, a schedule, a routine that will support students through distance learning. So those are the three tiers of parent engagement training that we have scheduled for our parents. Oh, I just went over those. And then the other, as Norma had mentioned, you know, we really had been focused on social emotional learning, but we also know that this is even more important now. And so the committee that worked on this made the recommendations in regards to the CASEL framework, in ensuring that we are looking at this in an integrated way, that this is not something that gets taught in isolation at the beginning of the day and not necessarily integrated throughout the day in everything we do. And so they came up with all day, every day for everyone as that lens that social emotional learning is about everything and not isolated skills that need to be taught. And then one of the things that CASEL is doing right now in response to the Black Lives Matter and just the overall, you know, things that are happening across the country, is that now they're applying the lens of cultural responsive practices, social justice to their competencies, and coming up with sort of the definitions and the skills and the practices that would support that. And so we are looking forward to their release of that, so that we can start integrating that as well into the practices that we're engaged in as we move forward. Meal distribution, we know that this is one of the things that we will continue to do. You know, every single site will now go back to meal distributions daily. They will get breakfast and lunch, will be grab and go curbside. Students that qualify for free and reduced will be able to do so free. We have submitted a grant for a universal meal program, and if that is if we're successful in getting that, or the waiver through the federal government like we did in the spring, we will be able to provide meals to all students regardless of their eligibility. So we're looking forward to doing that. And so obviously we want to make sure that everybody's safe, and that's why the grab and go, people coming in their cars, and if they have to walk up to the distribution center, there'll be markers so that they can socially distance as well. And then the choral support. We know that there's, that we heard from a lot of our families that, their ability to go to work and have the students engage in distance learning was going to be a huge challenge. And so the guidance from the ACES after school funding came in, and allowing the grant to be used for during the day. And so we've been working closely with Choral in identifying the staff that they have, and offering a 7-hour, 5-day a week in school support, and where they're going to have 12 students per classroom. They'll have the student schedule. They'll know when they're supposed to log into Zoom. They'll know what work they have to do in Synchronous, and they'll provide that level of support and other enrichment activities throughout the day. So we're really happy that we're able to do this because this is one of the things that our families were really asking for. We are prioritizing foster youth, McKinley-Vento, and students with special needs, and our newcomer students. We had the application released last week. The deadline was yesterday, and I'm glad to report that based on the signups as of Monday, we believe that every student that applied will get in. We have enough spots for those that applied up until Monday. I also want to report that the city released yesterday in a meeting that I was with, that they are also going to be providing this level of care at some of their sites. And for us, that will be the Seven Trees Community Center and the Tully Community Center. And those will be through our referrals. So they will not do a general application to the community, but they will be getting referrals through FMSD for those spots that they have at those locations. And these are just important dates up until we get into the first day of school. Obviously, some of them, have passed, but certainly the 12th and the 13th are big days for us. Our staff will be engaged in professional development the next couple of days. Teachers will get the 14th to be able to process everything that we've gone over on the 12th and the 13th, plan and get ready for the 17th, when our students will be reporting back to school virtually. And then we'll be providing the parent workshops throughout the month of August and September. And then we'll assess that and continue to work with FMCI to provide ongoing training for our parents. And that is it. We are open for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Juan. That was definitely a lot of information. Thank you to everybody else, Norma, Jason, for all your help with this report. Board members, questions that you may have, please ask at this time.
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
So regarding the devices, does the district currently have enough devices for all students in our district?
So what I would say is that we have enough devices for all students that need one that don't currently have their own device. We have some orders that are on back order that we placed that you approved back in May.
Okay.
And they're not due until October. And so at that point, what our plan is to be able to replace their device with one of ours, so that it's easy for us to troubleshoot and to push out the apps. But we do have enough for students that don't have their own device at this point.
Okay, so then if a family has their own device, but for whatever reason that device is not compatible and they're not able to access the tools that the district has, what alternatives do they have if you run out of devices at that point?
So I believe we have enough for that situation, but if it doesn't, if it comes back that we are short devices, we will have to work with those families to make sure that they're getting access, whether it's us, running downloading the work and helping the students, get that work completed and turned in. I don't anticipate that being the problem, the first go around, but our goal is to make sure that every single student has an FMSD device. We just, we're stuck with some of these orders being on back order. And we're not the only ones in that situation, but we do have enough in hand to meet the need of students that don't have a device.
And for those parents that decide to opt out of the online distance learning because maybe it doesn't work for their kid, maybe the kid can focus on Zoom, what alternatives do they have then as far as learning?
So they'll have the asynchronous part of it, but we also then will work with teachers about how do they connect with the student in that situation. Part of that is, trying to understand what's the barrier, what's the reason why the student cannot engage in that platform, and coming up with a solution for that. And so we'll treat that, on an individual case and try to find a solution for that student.
Okay.
May I add some information? So they could be given educational packets, or they can do assignments and the teacher can call them on the telephone and review the lesson with them. So there could be other ways to connect with the students. It doesn't have to be through the video. It can be through telephone as well.
Okay. And when will families actually be informed of the new plan that's being implemented, since school is scheduled to start on the 17th? Or have they already been informed?
We have been regularly communicating with them and having the town hall meetings. The newsletter is due to go out, I want to say tomorrow morning. I think it hasn't already gone out, and that has all this information as well.
Okay, so it's going out tomorrow. Okay.
If it didn't already go out this evening, it will go out tomorrow morning. Okay.
And you mentioned training support for parents as far as how distance learning will function. Does that training also include support for parents of special ed students?
Yes, all parents.
Okay. The other question I had was around compensatory education. How does the district plan to address that, since it wasn't mentioned in the presentation?
Right. Well, that's an individual IEP matter. And so every single IEP that will be addressed when they meet with the family and they make an assessment of any loss of learning or any services that were not provided. And so at each IEP meeting, that will be addressed based on each individual student's needs and what happened during distance learning.
Okay. And regarding the childcare that's going to be provided by Coral, is that again going to be provided on site at our school sites? And have you selected which school sites, or is it going to be at all 16 schools?
So based on the information we got from yesterday's deadline of applications, we have identified 9 sites.
Okay.
And the services will be provided at those 9 sites, and students from across the district will be eligible for those sites. So it's not just students from that site.
Okay, those were all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
I have a few.
Yeah, go ahead, Rudy.
Hey, I want to follow up with Carrie's question regarding devices per student, but I want to take it on another angle. Are there any students, Jason? Are there any students that will not be able to participate in distance learning because they don't have a device?
So I think that question was answered already. We believe that we have enough devices for all students who need a device.
Yeah, but that's not what I asked. That's not what I asked. I know that the goal is to have a device for every student, but do you foresee any students not being able to participate in distance learning because they don't have a device, whether it's their personal or a district issued?
No.
Okay, can we check with all the schools to make sure that that's the case? Because I think there might be some schools that are either whether it's a fact or rumored, but there are some frustrations about some schools that don't have, that are very concerned that not all of their students will have a device for distance learning.
Yeah,
Yes,
I know that there was one site, Stonegate, who was having that concern, but we've redistributed devices from other sites to help cover that need. But we are going to do an assessment. We are going to do an assessment for all sites to make sure that
Okay,
we are
so that
getting
school
devices
is,
for all.
taken care of then.
Yep.
All right.
just-
It might be a case of just people just talking and getting antsy and frustrated. So we just need to make sure that that any rumors that are going around or any communication going around, or whether it's a rumor or fact, that it's addressed.
Yeah, so Board Member Rodriguez, thank you for bringing that. I will say that that was a fact, that last spring, that school did not follow through on what was the directive, which was every student get a device. They went ahead and gave a device per family. And we did not know that until a couple of days ago, that's how they proceeded. And so we've been working, IT's been working with the site and correcting that, because that was not what we had directed, and we have plenty of devices. And so we're correcting that. So no, that was true. And so one of the things that we're gonna be doing, Cabinet, is we're gonna be calling every single principal to make sure that we have the facts correct and that we are able to address it if somehow there was some miscommunication.
Okay, I just want to, some of these questions are kind of urgent now because we're less than a week before school starts. And then Norma, I had a question regarding the measuring the loss of learning. How are we going to measure that? How is that? Do we know yet? I mean, I'm really curious how we're going to measure a loss of learning.
That is the conversation that we're all having on the instructional side throughout the county. I think we need to look at, we've talked about looking at baseline data. So assessing our students as they return, so to speak, right now, and seeing where they are, looking at data from the last benchmark assessment that students took to look at trends. So we haven't gotten any very specific information from anyone to tell us how to do this, except that we have to put it into a report. But certainly we're going to look at data and also really rely on teachers to kind of give us their own observations about what they're seeing with their students. I will have more information for you as we start moving into the school year and start talking with teachers and working with the students.
Well, I understand, because this is a very unusual time and we have never experienced this.
Yes.
Even in my old age and, entire life, I've never seen anything like this. So it's just a different educational life for all of us.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, George.
Okay, thank you. Maimona?
I do have a couple of questions.
Yes.
So in terms of I know we've covered the devices, but in terms of internet connectivity specifically, do we have enough hotspots to meet the need at this time?
So I believe, go ahead.
I was just going to say that we're still doing the assessment to make sure that we have enough devices for everyone with hotspots or who needs a hotspot. And obviously, we're very thankful for the partnership with the City of San Jose and Santa Clara County Office of Education, the county, to get the additional hotspots to get us up to 1,200. But we're going to probably have to order more hotspots given the current trend of issuing out hotspots so quickly.
And then is IT able to keep track in terms of feedback from families of, I know there's sometimes some issues even with hotspots of a stronger signal or some dead zones or areas that are more difficult to get connectivity. So are we able to keep track of which carriers are more effective in certain areas and redistribute? How does that work?
Yeah, we can definitely keep track of that. We have an IT ticketing process. So as we get emails or requests from site staff to help support families who have poor connection, we can obviously track that through our IT ticketing system. And we actually have 2 vendors that we're trying to work with to make sure that we have adequate coverage throughout our district. We have contract with Verizon for hotspot coverage, as well as AT&T for hotspot coverage. And between those two vendors, we should be able to cover most of our sites. If there is a continued issue in which AT&T or Verizon does not work, then we'll look for a third carrier.
Okay. And you mentioned the needs assessment. So at what point, I mean, because we are getting, very close to the first day of school, and CCA's already started. So at what point will we have that needs assessment determined so we can evaluate whether we're meeting the need or not?
We should know that within the next couple of days, if there's a need for more. And the great thing about hotspots is that we're able to get them fairly quickly. As we know that we need more, we can get them in a couple of days. So Sam is working with his connections with school sites to make sure that we have enough to address family needs.
Okay. The other questions I had were on, in terms of registration. I know that there's the protocols for school offices, but for registering students, is that available online?
Yes, we have that available online. What we've been doing also for those families that may not have the technical, equipment or skills and those kinds of things, what they've been doing is actually on the phone while the staff actually is entering the information into the system, the online system. And then once that is done, the only thing that they need to do is if they can't scan and upload the documents, then they're asked to come into the office and drop off the documents for that enrollment to be completed.
Okay. And then in terms of, I know it was mentioned that there was some uncertainty around special education assessments. So has the district looked into online assessments specifically for special ed, or have any been purchased?
So we do have an assessment tool that can be used with the iPad and those kinds of things. Legal counsel did a presentation to us in terms of how, what is the current guidance and what are the obligations we have. And because we're still not in person, the assessment timelines are suspended until such time either we get further guidance or we come in person. And so they just asked us to do everything we can to respond to parents in regards to what they're asking, and if there's ways for us to still do a records review, especially for a triennial for an older student, that we have enough information that we can go ahead and do that. Where it's difficult is for the initials because they require so much more. And so we're waiting to get further guidance from the CELPA and from CDE in regards to some of these timelines.
Okay, Mona, tomorrow the teachers are being trained by Pearson on the Wyatt digital assessment. And so we're providing that training to our teachers anyway, just because we want them to learn how to do that.
Great. So will our service providers be required at any point to report in person to conduct any assessments?
Not at this time.
Okay.
I mean, Dr. Galvarin came up with a whole protocol and assessment center. She gave Jason a long list of, iPad for the tester, iPad for the student, the plexiglass. I mean, it was a really well-designed plan, but it is on hold for now.
Okay.
Especially because CDE, the guidance that CDE put out was that we were not cleared for in-person assessment at this time.
Okay. And then in terms of, so with this presentation, I know it's a lot of information and it's very verbose in terms of you have to take the time to try to understand all of the language and the vocabulary. So is there a plan to make this information more accessible to, I mean, even teachers, families, and students?
So we normally, what we do is take this information and do condense it for when we're communicating with families, and we try to change some of the language, more of the terminology that I know is in educational ease. So we've been doing that, in regards to at least our parents. I know that the information that we just are sending out is simply on the schedule and with distance learning and those kinds of things, the choral program. But we are constantly trying to chunk it and send it in more simpler language for our families. And obviously it's always translated. So we will continue to do that. And I'm not sure if you saw, but we also then put a live binder where we're, because there's a lot of information and part of that is also how it's organized and where can it easily find it. And so last night I sent out that to staff, and I know that it's going to take time for them to go through it, and but at least it's accessible and they can go out on their own time, and slowly start to look at that as well.
Okay. And I guess one last question that I have is back on technology. So we covered devices, we covered hotspots, but in terms of the capacity to now, I know some of it was covered in terms of the tech mentors and library media aides who are going to be supporting with that. But in terms of the actual devices, do we have the capacity right now to support with, tech support with all of these, devices and hotspots that are now going out? I mean, it's in the thousands at this point, right? With our devices and hotspots combined. So do we have that tech capacity or personnel capacity to be able to do that effectively?
We also increased the staffing within IT. We hired, or we're trying to hire two. We already have one on staff, 2 additional technicians to help meet the potential workload. But this is the first time, I mean, we're in uncharted territories, right? So this is the first time that we've had to go through a full distance learning scenario. So if the indicators state that we need more staff, we'll get more staff.
Okay, great. And then just to make sure I won't ask the rest of my about 20 questions, but if I'd like to ask for the rest of the questions that I submitted earlier to be on the record as well.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maimona. Just had a couple of quick things here. In terms of hot points, I remember originally that a hot point could be used for 3 devices, something like that. And we were giving families maybe 2, those who had more than 3 kids. But I heard there were hot points that would be available to service 12, upwards of 12 devices. Are we getting some of those devices especially for our families that have multiple kids in the schools?
So I know that the Verizon one was only 3 per device. I'm not sure what the AT&T.
The AT&T ones, it was just on the webinar in which they talked about the AT&T devices that we're getting for free, and they said that they can cover up to 12 individuals on one, or 12 devices on one device, one hotspot. Time will tell to see if that's a true statement or not, but I think they've done their due diligence to make sure that those devices can meet the capacity.
Okay. And then another thing too, I know Maimona mentioned tech support, and we had, laid off a couple of our tech support people. Are we thinking of maybe bringing those individuals, or that I think we have one individual that we didn't bring back, haven't brought back. Are we thinking of bringing that position back? Is that the one you mentioned, Jason?
So yeah, that's what I was mentioning earlier. So
okay.
In terms of the technicians, we did offer those 2 spots to the same individuals who were laid off. One accepted, the other one did not. So we're looking for another person to fill that second.
Okay, that's good to hear in light of what's going on right now. And then the other thing, of course, as we know, this is uncharted territory for everybody. I guess as we start out, next week with our distance learning, I guess we'll be able to gauge maybe in a month or maybe sooner how we're doing out there, in terms of what's going on with our teachers, of course, with our families, and see, I'd like to get the flavor of what's going on, but I know it's going to take a little. It's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to take a little while, maybe a month or so, 6 weeks. What are we looking at in terms of getting another report back from you? And this is all this tonight has been really informative, and I know it's just the groundwork that has been laid out, and I really appreciate everybody who was involved. You know, there's so many committees over the summertime. And now as we get underway, we'll, you know, definitely need to kind of revisit and get some feedback. So I'll leave it up to you, you know, whenever you think you can come back to us and let us know how we're doing so far.
Well, as you know, we'll have this, you know, our COVID-19 response agendized at every single one of our meetings. And so when we believe that you know, we have enough information to give you, we will give you an update on all aspects of our response. Certainly, you know, what I'm hearing is, you know, the board would really want us to report back on a confirmation of that students are not having a barrier of devices and hotspots as one of the things that we need to report back to the board on for sure. And so we will continue to look at ways of data that we can collect and bring that forward to you.
You know, a real concern I have is the loss of time that will be out there. I think the loss of learning, particularly if we don't help our parents with the academic setting that they have to establish for their children, you know, because this is, again, something they've never experienced. They send their kids to school to get educated, but now they're there, and, you know, albeit there's a teacher on the other side, but the teacher's not there present, so they're actually taking on the role of a teacher too, you know, and having to set the calendar down for the kids and the daily schedule, so on. And I think, boy, that might be a little overwhelming for parents, especially the parents who have kids at the elementary level, and then of course the middle school level, and some at the high school level, which we have parents that might very well have kids across all those grade levels. And so those are the parents I worry about. So I'm glad that we're doing workshops for parents, and I know you'll be bringing back a report, because it'll be interesting to see how we're helping our parents in that regard. Okay, board members, do you have any more questions?
I just had one.
Yes,
I just had one quick question.
Yeah.
I did want to clarify. So starting fall with distance learning, will special ed students also be receiving support services like for speech and OT as well via Zoom video conferencing? Is that the plan?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And so one of the things that we're asking staff that are providing services is that they work with the teachers to make sure that they try to schedule those during times that they're not engaged in synchronous, so as to not have those students miss from that. I know it's a scheduling nightmare, and so it may not always work, but that's the goal, that they try to do that first, and then if it doesn't work, then they'll have to pull them out of synchronous time.
Anything else, board members? I do want to mention real quick, I did run into one of our parents at Costco who works at Costco, but she has kids with our district. I know her from a long time back. Anyway, she asking me a few questions. I said, well, let me find out some answers and I'll get back to you. So I gave her my phone number, my card and phone number. And so that's why I'm glad we're asking all these questions. So when she calls me, I'll be able to at least hopefully have an answer for her.
Yeah, and I'll just tell the board, and we will continue to have town hall meetings, you know, as we get started, you know, both for staff and for parents. We've gotten a really good response from them, and a lot of feedback from the town hall meetings, and so I was committed to with them that this will be an ongoing platform for us to get feedback and for them to be able to bring up any issues that they're having. The last town hall meeting, combined all three of them, we had about 500 parents log in. So, you know,
that's good.
The level of response.
Very, very good. Okay, great. That's good to hear.
Hey, George, one
Yes, go ahead.
more comment. And I appreciate everything, all the work that you've done. The plan and everything is great, Jason, and Norma with all the committee work and everything. But no matter how well you communicate and no matter how hard you get the word out, the message out, some teachers, principals, parents are not going to hear it. So we're just going to have to address whatever concerns there are one at a time, because they're going to contact their peers, or they're going to contact a principal or somebody, and then it starts snowballing. So just do your best. I know it's really tough. It's not an easy thing to do, and then they turn into rumors. So they start, it starts inflating into something worse than it might not be. But they're all important, and we need to make sure that all of the community knows that everybody's concerns are important. That we don't raise our eyebrows or roll our eyes. That we answer all of the concerns equally. And the whole. I love the work that Maimona's doing with the digital equity. And then we had that resolution. That's so important. Unfortunately, some people are going to get lost in the, between the cracks. And we just need to make sure that everybody's comment is equally heard and equally justified, because all the comments, whether you've communicated it 10 times a day or not, that everyone is heard equally.
Thank you, Rudy. Any other comments, board members? If not, we'll go ahead and close this. And Juan, you had one more speaker on this. Did they come on board? You want them?
They're no longer logged in.
Oh, okay. All righty. Okay, well, let's move forward. In terms of 5.01, is that an action item or just information?
Just an information.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're done with item 5.01. Let's go to item 6, which deals with consent items over $25,000. So again, we can hear from the public regarding these items, and remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each. And we go to 6.01, ratification of the 2020-2021 contract and remind for the two-way communication between parents and staff. Juan, did you want to address that one?
Those are consent items.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Move to approve consent item 6.01.
Second.
We have a motion, a second to approve consent item 6.01. All in favor signify by saying aye.
No roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. You forget over the summertime. All right, here we go. Rudy Rodriguez, board member.
Yes, aye.
Board member Kaya Rosado.
Aye.
Board member Maimona Absal Berta.
Aye.
And then I also vote aye, George Sanchez, on that item. Okay, real good. Let's go on to item number 7. Consent items over $25,000. And again, the public can address us on these items, and then they will be given 3 minutes, and then we'll respond, or the administration will respond accordingly. So we have items 7.01 through 7.05. So take a look at those, board members, and let me know if there's any one of these that you wanted to pull tonight. If not, I'll need a motion, a second, items 7.01 through 7.05.
Move to approve consent items 7.01 through 7.05.
Second.
We have a motion, a second to approve consent item 7.01 to 7.05. These are consent items over $25,000. So let's do a roll call. Board member Rodriguez.
Aye.
Board member Rosado.
Aye.
Board member Absal Berta.
Aye.
And I, board member Sanchez, also vote aye on that. So that passes 4-0. Okay, let's go on to item number 8, which deals with construction items. And so again, remarks can be made to us regarding this item that we have here tonight. And you can speak to us for 3 minutes. And I don't think we have anybody speaking on this item. So item 8.01, ratification of the 2020-2021 contract with Jan Plumbing for main service breaker Bridges Academy. So any discussion, questions on this one, board members? If not, I'll need a motion in a second.
Move to approve item 8.01.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve item 8.01, and we'll do a roll call. Board member Rodriguez,
Aye.
board member Rosado,
Aye.
board member Afzal Berta,
Aye.
and board member Sanchez. I vote aye. So that passes by a 4-0 vote. Okay, at this time, we go on to action items, and we go to action item 9.01, personnel report. And I believe we have no personnel report tonight, except the one that's in the.
Yeah. Move to approve item 9.01.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve 9.01, our personnel report, and we'll take a roll call. Board member Rodriguez,
Aye.
board member Rosado,
Aye.
board member Afzal Berta,
Aye.
and board member Sanchez. I also vote aye on that, so that passes 4-0. Okay, let's go on to item 9.02. We have the June 23rd, 2020 and July 15th, 2020 board meeting minutes. If you want to take a look at those board members, and then I'll need a motion to approve these 2 minutes.
Move to approve the June 23rd and July 15th, 2020 board meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the item 9.02. So we'll do a roll call. Board member Rodriguez,
Aye.
board member Rosado,
Aye.
board member Afzal Berta,
Aye.
and board member Sanchez also votes aye. So that passes 4-0. Let's go on to item 9.03, board resolution number 2020-48, classified layoff reduction in hours. Again, I'll need a motion unless there's discussion on this item.
Maybe Annette can explain exactly what's
Annette,
going
can
on.
you explain that a little bit? Yes, thank you.
So at Windmill Springs, we had the position of library media assistant, and it was augmented by 2 hours from the site budget. The employee in that position has resigned because she took a promotion to another position within our district. So before filling the vacancy, the site decided they, due to a lack of funds, would not be interested in continuing the additional hours. So the position would likely be reverted to the base of 6 hours. And so no employee was involved in the reduction, and we would just like to have that approved for the base 6 hours.
Thank you, Annette. That was very good.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll need a motion, board members, in a second.
Move to approve action item 9.03.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second on item 9.03. Let's do a roll call. Board member Rodriguez,
Aye.
board member Rosado,
Aye.
board member Afzal Berta,
Aye.
and board member Sanchez. I also vote aye, so that passes 4-0. Okay, let's go on to item 9.04, the formal acceptance of the San Jose Digital Inclusion Grant on $180,000 and then $50,000, and COVID-19 Education Partnership Grant, $24,000. Those are some nice figures.
Mhm. Yes, definitely they are. This is an opportunity for
Jason, you're breaking up.
administration to bring to the board.
I think it's part of the digital item.
3 grants to be formally accepted by the board. The first 2 grants from San Jose devices that we're purchasing, as well as some hotspots that we're purchasing. There's not much I can do about my signal. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're coming a little bit better.
Hello?
Go ahead.
No, you're not moving.
Is that better?
Well, you're
Your
frozen,
voice-
but
your
that's
voice is
okay.
coming through. That's fine.
We can hear you.
Go ahead. We can hear you.
Oh, not anymore.
We can hear him. Jason, can you hear us? I think
I
you shut
can't
off.
hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
Okay. So these are 3 grants that we are bringing to the board for formal acceptance. 2 of the grants are from San Jose Digital Inclusion. These grants are going to help cover the cost of purchasing Chromebooks and hotspots to help provide connectivity for our students during distance learning. The last grant for $24,000 under the COVID-19 Education Partnership is going to be utilized for paying for most of the Go Guardian license. So we're bringing this to the board.
I think we got enough information,
to hear
Yeah,
George.
we kind of got the gist of it. I'll need a
Hold
motion,
on.
a second, board members.
Move to approve item 9.04, the formal acceptance.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, item 9.04. Let's do a roll call. Board member Rodriguez,
Aye.
board member Rosado. Board member Rosado. We lost Carrie. Hi, Carrie. Okay, let's go on. Board
Maybe you
member,
can record or vote later.
board member Absol Berta,
Aye.
and I vote aye on that.
She's back. Carrie's back.
Aye.
We have 4-0 on item 9.04, so that passes 4-0. Let's go to item 9.05. This is a 45-day budget revision for fiscal year 2020-21. You want to address that, Jason?
Juan might have to.
Yes.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah, Jason, go ahead.
I am, yeah, I've turned off my video. Hopefully that'll allow my audio
Okay.
to come through a little bit better.
Yes.
So in terms of this budget, this board agenda item, the budget for the state of California has been adopted after we adopted our budget for this fiscal year. And that adopted budget for the state of California is a lot more favorable for our district and all other districts within the state of California.
Wow.
The per student funding amount was significantly increased as part of the state's adopted budget. And based on that significant increase, we're bringing to the board a 45-day budget revision in accordance with Ed Code section 42127H. Essentially what happened is that the governor approved removing the deficit factor that was in the May revise, but at the same time, he lowered the COLA, the cost of living adjustment, year over year to 0. The net impact, though, was a positive gain for our district. It actually increased revenue under LCFF by over $19 million for the 3 years presented, 2021, 21-22, and 22-23. And so this agenda item is bringing to the board that significant increase in revenue. So as you can see, it's had a significant positive impact on our reserve percentages. It went up to 16.5 after year 1 is over, 26.6 after year 2, and 26.3 after year 3. I want to make sure that everyone realizes that this multi-year projection has only been updated for the impact due to LCFF. As you may recall, the adopted budget at the end of June included some significant budget reductions in the 3 years. So 1.7 million for this year, 2021, another 11.4 million in 22-23, and another 1.2 million, 11.4 million for year 21-22, and then another 1.2 million in year 22-23. So those reductions need to be addressed now that we have a significant increase in our revenue, and essentially determine what reductions do we want to maybe pull back on because the revenue has materialized. So that's this budget agenda item for the board to review, ask any questions, and accept as presented.
Okay.
Question.
Yes, go ahead, Rudy. Question.
So But that doesn't mean that the governor will revise the budget again for the subsequent years, right?
Oh, he will most certainly revise it for year 2 and year 3.
Yeah, so we could be receiving more funding during those years as well.
Or it could go down. It all depends on the economy, obviously. So it's hard to predict what that's going to produce. No one
Well-
expected a pandemic for this year.
Yeah, but our economy, it's going to take our economy 5 to 10 years to recover. So I have a feeling that it could be, I mean, education is very important to the governor. So,
Sure.
so that's important. So, okay. So I'm looking at the adjustment. That 19 million that's in addition to what's already written on there, correct?
Correct. So if you're looking at the attachment, essentially what I did here was basically show the multi-year projection that was presented to the board and included a line item called LCFF based on
Right.
adopted state budget, which shows the impact of the adopted budget. by
So
the
the
state.
first column is 2020, 2021. The second column is 21, 22. And the third
Correct.
column is 22, 23.
Correct. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I forgot to include those years in there.
Okay,
for you.
and then also you might want to correct the word adopted. It's misspelled.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'll give you a C for grammar. I'm kidding.
No worries.
Yeah, all right, thank you, Rudy. Board members, other questions regarding this item?
I did have a couple quick questions.
Yes, go ahead.
So in terms of, you mentioned it's kind of like that green highlighted, right? Was the change in
Correct.
LCFF. So
Yes.
based on that, and then you were talking about other potential reductions that we had factored in prior to finding out the governor's adopted budget. So
Correct.
are those reductions noted in here?
Yes, so in that multi-year projection, it includes those budget reductions. I also included it in the memo as well. So ideally, the next step would be to have a budget advisory committee meeting to talk about those budget reductions and see which ones we want to pull back on, how much do we want to pull back on those budget reductions, which would obviously reduce our reserve percentage. But it makes sense that now that the revenue has been restored to a certain degree, not all of it has come back, but restored significantly. It makes sense that we would have a discussion on what budget reductions we truly need going forward.
And where are those listed? Are those under the expenditures or the fund balances, or is it not on this particular document, the summary?
The summary of the budget reductions?
Just the total general fund summary. Does that list the potential reductions?
The reductions were listed as part of the adopted budget for our district back in June.
So it's
they're
not on the
included in
summary.
this.
Okay.
No.
And then the other question I had was in terms of the reserve percentage going from 16.46% to 26.56. So is that primarily just the 6.3 million for this year? Is that how that's calculated? What
So it's yeah. So again, it's the LCFF, the increased funding per student. So if you look at the attachment, the 6.3 million was an increase for the first year, and then there was another 7.9, almost 8 million for the second year. So those two pieces adding to our revenue increases our reserve percentage.
And do we know already, I mean, the state adopted budget, does that include that 7.9 million, or could that still change that amount for the following school year?
That can still change. It can go up or go down.
Okay, so that the second percentage, the 26% reserve for next school year is still a projection.
It's still a projection. It will always be a projection until it's over.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Jason.
Yep.
Anything else, board members? And Jason, thank you for that. You do bring us good news. That's good
George,
news.
don't jinx us.
All right, so I'll need a motion, a second, item 9.05, board members.
Move to approve item 9.05.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second to approve item 9.05. We'll do a roll call. Board member Rodriguez,
Aye.
Board Member Rosado,
Aye.
Board Member Absal Berta,
Aye.
and Board Member Sanchez. I vote aye, so that passes 4-0. Okay, let's go on to item 9.06, resolution number 2020-47 in support of National Hispanic Heritage Month. Superintendent.
So we bring this resolution forward annually, and then we work with our school sites, ensuring that they're implementing the awareness and through the activities. And so obviously we will continue to do that, even though we're in distance learning. There may be some of the activities that they would have done in person that maybe can't be done through distance learning, but this is, obviously even more important right now with just the things that are going around, across the nation, and making sure that we're always looking to highlight the accomplishments of all the groups that make up the United States. And certainly as we move forward with the resolution that the board passed and the adoption of a ethnic studies curriculum will be important for us to continue to bring these forward, and we're doing more than just the resolution, but how do we implement that in an integrated and sustainable way.
Thank you,
Quick,
Superintendent.
quick question, Juan.
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Juan, has anybody approached the district about the possibility of changing that from Hispanic Heritage Month to Latinx Heritage Month? No? Okay,
No.
well, it might be coming from our younger people.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that.
Yeah.
Other comments, board members? So this is good. The resolution we're passing, like the superintendent said, maybe a little bit different this year because of the circumstances, but again, always hopeful that in the future we might be able to do a lot more of the things that we were doing around these resolutions once more. But for now, we just have to do the best we can to keep these resolutions alive. So I will need a motion, a second, board members.
I just also really quickly wanted to add,
Yes, go ahead.
George, just to echo Board Member Rodriguez's comments. I think, in the realm of making sure that we're being culturally responsive and sensitive, I think looking into that discussion on our
Sure.
wording of this is something we should consider. And also just excited because I think there's great potential for us in terms of, I know we're in distance learning, but we're also rolling out our dual language immersion program in Spanish. And so I think that's just another way that we're highlighting and emphasizing that we are going to continue to celebrate our students' cultures and identities and language. So excited to see our district continue to make these efforts to emphasize that message.
Good point.
Yes.
And I want to add one more comment to that. That I do appreciate that that we are recognizing this, because when I was, comparing this to the ethnic studies resolution that I introduced earlier this summer, this wasn't even existent where I went to school. There was no Hispanic heritage. There was actually, I was called Mexican American back then, and Hispanic is not even cultural, neither is Latinx. So there is no cultural sensitivity to that. It's either the culture is Mexican, Latinos, South American, or other Latin countries.
Right.
But Hispanic is a term that was used that started in the 1970s for the census, the U.S. Census, in identifying a certain group of people that they didn't know how to identify. And I remember when it was introduced, I was in high school at the time, and we went from being called Mexican American to being called Hispanic.
Thank you, Rudy. Anything else? Any other questions or comments, board members? If not, I will need a motion, a second, item 9.06.
Move to approve item 9.06.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to approve item 9.06. We'll do a roll call. Board Member Rodriguez.
Aye.
Board Member Rosado.
Aye.
Board Member Absal Berta.
Aye.
And Board Member Sanchez, so I vote aye too. So that passes 4-0. Okay, let's go on to item number 10, which deals with communication from the superintendent. So we'll hear from the superintendent at this time. Juan.
Yeah, I just want to again reaffirm my appreciation to everybody that has been working very hard towards our reopening, and we certainly are looking forward to the 17th, and making sure that our students are needs are being met. It was this morning again with our staff. I think at one point I lost count of who was logging into the webinar. We had over 600. And just thank you to Board President George for being able to give some remarks, and CSEA and FMEA as well. And I think everybody's obviously apprehensive of what's coming, and we're all worried about what is this going to do to our students and all that. And I think that more than anything, this is the time that we come together and make sure that they're taken care of, but also that our staff are being taken care of. And that's my message to staff, is that we need to make sure that we're addressing the needs of the adults as much as we're addressing the needs of our students. So looking forward to the start of the year, and continuing to collaborate with everybody on behalf of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Now let's go on to item 11, which deals with communication from the Board of Education. We go to 11.01, which deals with board member reports. And I'll go down my list here. And I have Board Member Rodriguez first. Board Member Rodriguez.
No report. I just wanted to make a comment, though, that when there's any kind of an event at our district office, like a press conference, that it would be great if all board members, even if it's the last minute, that all board members were made aware of this. We don't have. We should make our board equal and have equal access, that all board members should be made aware of any press conferences or any events at our district office. I'm not pointing fingers or placing the blame. I just think that it should be made aware to all board members. That's it.
Thank you, Board Member Rodriguez. Let's go with Board Member Carrie Rosado.
No report.
Okay, no report. Board Member Maimona F. Salberta.
You're muted.
Maimona?
Yes, can you
Go ahead,
hear me?
Maimona. It's your turn.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to thank all of our staff and our committees, our unions, and cabinet for working really hard on the start of the school year, and wishing everyone a successful and strong start to the school year. I know that I was able to briefly join the new certificated staff training, and just welcoming our new educators to Franklin-McKinley. And so I just wanted to also be able to extend those warm wishes to the rest of our Franklin-McKinley community. And we know it's not going to be easy, but I'm really confident that we're all going to do the best that we can to provide the best learning experiences for our students in a safe manner. And on that note, 2 other quick updates. I was able to participate in that press conference with some of our supervisors and city council members, specifically on digital equity. And as a member of the Digital Equity Coalition, just to share some of those updates with funding $15.3 million that were allocated for devices and hotspots. So we know that there's still issues, but it's great to see that we're making progress there. I also attended an information session by the San Jose Public Library on the Access San Jose program. And so I also wanted to make sure everyone knew that the general public will also soon be able to check out. They're going to have 3,000 hotspots available through their library catalog. And so that's a great resource also for our community to be able to access those resources there. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Maimona. And just a couple of things from me. As Superintendent said, I was able to give some thank you remarks this morning to our staff for all the great work they've done, and thank everybody who worked throughout the summer and participated in all the different workshops to make sure that we got the school year ready to go. I was involved in NALEO, the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials, had their conference but it was through Zoom. We couldn't go to Las Vegas, so they did have a 2-day conference. It was very interesting. So they had a lot of information, of course, on the census, voter participation. They also had Vice President Joe Biden on, and they invited Mr. Trump too, President Trump, but he had other things going on. But Joe Biden was there, and he did make some remarks, so on, answered questions, so on. So that was good. Good to see him on there. So that was a different NALEO conference, not the same. They're never the same as like your live conferences, but it was good. It was good to that they got it off the ground and were able to pull it off. And then I want to congratulate board member Maimona Alberta for her election, and then my election too. So we're very fortunate. We had nobody else step forward, and so we got 4 years in the books, and so that's kind of nice, not having to fight that battle like we did 4 years ago.
It's not official till the votes are counted, though.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll see. We'll keep our fingers crossed. And that's my report. And the other, we're going to go to the other item, 11.02, agenda item requests. So board members, do you have any agenda item requests at this time?
Yeah, I would like to get updates on how the Spanish dual immersion is going now that it's going to be launched, and how the district will manage the whole loss of learning, how that process will be handled, and how distance learning is going for the special ed students.
Okay. So noted. Superintendent, you got that down? You have that down one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we go on to future business, and we go on to future meeting dates, item 13. And our board retreat, we're working on that. So hopefully we'll have some information for you so we can get that off the ground. And we always like to do the retreat in August. So we'll send some dates out on that to go ahead and see who's available, what dates, okay, for the board retreat. And then item 13.02, the August 25th, 2020, 7 p.m. we'll have a remote board meeting, our second meeting of the month by remote. And then we go to September 13.03, September 8th, and 13.04, September 22nd, our 2 board meetings, and also remote. Unfortunately, we can't meet with our parents like we usually do. The first board meeting of the month. And so at this point, we move on to closed session. We don't have closed session. We go on to item 15, adjournment. So I'll need a motion and a second for adjournment, board members.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second for adjournment. So let me go ahead and do a quick final roll call for the evening. Board member Rodriguez.
Aye.
Board member Rosado.
Aye.
Board member Alberta.
Aye.
And board member Sanchez also vote aye. So at this time, about 8:55 p.m., we adjourn our meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice rest of the evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.